being an entrepreneur is taking a lot of losses and then just hitting a few home runs. It can be scary, but with tenacity and by grinding and sticking to it, you can pull through and you can achieve, you can accomplish. My name is Nicholas Norena. I'm the founder and CEO of The Succulent Bite. We were in Croatia once. I took out my phone, gentleman, I told him, oh, I want this flavor and this flavor. He says, wonderful. That video had 100 million views. There's just components to that video that just make it very eye-catching. And that's precisely what I mean when I say it has to be a balance between adding value in your content and entertainment.
For creators starting out, what are 3 ways they can monetize their content effectively without having a massive following?
So one,
welcome back to another episode of Money Buys Happiness. As always, we appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode because these episodes are so valuable, okay? We got our merch out live right now, www.mbhtv.com. We got merch for all our shows, all our talent. Check it out. You guys will love it. But without further ado, today I sat down with Nico Norena, aka Succulent Bite. All right, he's accumulated hundreds of millions of views on socials. He's worked with massive brands from Coca-Cola to Disney. Okay, he was also listed on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. This guy is the real deal. Okay, we went over how he went from food content to building a multi-million-dollar business. We talked about how to work with big brands, small brands, how to keep them coming back, how to price your deliverables, all that stuff. We also talked about how to make your content viral, what you should be looking for, what you should be doing. And last but not least, we talked about how to monetize your audience. Question I get all the time, Ernesto, I have this many followers. How can I monetize them? Now we talked about it in this episode. So as always, get your notepad, put this value down, implement it into your life, and enjoy the show.
Welcome back, guys. Nico.
what's
How
up,
you doing,
brother?
brother?
Good to see you, man.
I mean, we just spoke a whole hour before this podcast,
Yeah,
but
literally.
we're gonna run it all back.
we did a preseason of the podcast.
I love it.
It was great.
You know, we've been trying to have you on for a while. We met at VCon.
Yeah.
You know, that was a great time. Shout out Gary V.
Shout out Gary V.
Putting that great event together. And you know, since then, I've stayed kind of connected with you, and it's been honestly like so cool to watch you grow. You know, like the content side of it, but then, you know, I'm finding out more about the business side of it, and it's like, wow, this guy's not just a content creator, you know? And that's how it looks from the outside
Right.
most of the time.
Right.
So what you've been building is super impressive, right? And
Appreciate you.
we'll get into like how saturated, let's say, the food content market is, but I think you've really done a good job differentiating yourself from everyone else, right?
Appreciate you,
Through
yeah.
your style of content, through your personality. So happy to have you.
Thank you.
You know?
Excited to be here. I'm so happy we could finally make this happen.
Of course.
We've been talking about it since, VCon in Indy. That was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So we've been like back and forth, like, when are we going to make this happen? When are you in town? Oh, are you going to Canada? Are you coming to Miami? And then here
Yeah.
we are, finally. It's
I
great.
wouldn't
Yeah.
stop though. I was always just like, yo, every time I go, I'm gonna hit him up.
Yeah.
And you know, like when I look at the food content creator economy, right?
Yeah.
Like we said, very saturated. And I wanted to do this podcast because I think the question I get asked the most
Yeah.
is, yo, Ernesto, I have 50,000 followers, or I have 20,000 followers, or I have 5.
Okay.
How am I gonna monetize my audience, right?
Right.
And I think, again, we're gonna get into it. You've done a great job on that.
Right.
But that was like a premise of why I wanted to do this. I think you're very knowledgeable when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
You've proven it. And I think that our audience, packed with content creators, is gonna get a lot of value out of what you've built.
Well, appreciate that.
And just
I
implement it.
hope I can add some value to the
Of
conversation
course.
today. Yeah.
So, okay, so let's start. I wanna start with this question. You know, throughout your career, you've done millions in brand deals.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout your career, amazing. That's crazy as a content creator.
I agree.
Right?
It's a blessing. Yeah.
For sure. But when was like the first time you realized that you could make money creating content?
I think the first time was, and I'll say this, I think that the moment that you get paid your first dollar for something you're putting out in the world, it just like installs this switch in your brain that you're like, wow,
Yeah.
wait a minute, this is something that could have a business future, right? That it makes you believe a little bit more in whatever it is that you're doing, because it's like somebody's willing to pay for your product or service. So
Yeah.
with that said, I started off because I love photography. I love food. And I started taking pictures of photos because back then Instagram, I started in 2015. Okay. Instagram didn't exist with, or they didn't have the features of reels or videos. It was just photos, right?
Yeah.
So I started posting pictures of photos. I started growing an audience, starting understanding what they wanted to see. And what happened was that one day I had my first brand deal, which was Talenti.
Wow.
So Talenti Gelato came in and they said, look, man, we'll pay you, I don't know, X. It was nothing crazy, right?
Yeah.
But it was like, I don't know, let's say for the sake of the argument, let's say it was $200, right?
Okay.
And they said, we're going to give you $200 to post about our new product. I'm like, okay. And I said, this is my first ad campaign. And it was fantastic. I had to follow guidelines and understand what they were looking for.
Yep.
And that was my first dip into brand partnerships. And that was so important because it was like, it's what really opened the doors. And I understood that at that point, I said, I need to incorporate this as a company. My page, the Succulent Bite, I incorporated as an S corporation. And yeah, I just started exploring the business side of it. Yeah.
Wow. And do you remember how big you were at that point? How many followers did you have when you got that first deal?
I think I can't tell you exactly. I like to say that I was over 55, 60K.
Wow.
But
which is
I'll
a
give
lot, like back then on Instagram.
Exactly.
Yes.
But keep in mind, the creator economy was not what it is today,
Of
right?
course.
The creator economy was getting started. The creator economy concept was not a concept, right?
I know people didn't even know they were just doing it. Like
They
you
were
were
just
posting
doing it.
pictures.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay. Do you remember how long it took to get the brand deal? Because I think that's important too.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this. It took me about a year to get to 10,000 followers.
Wow.
At the beginning, because I was learning. I had no idea what I was doing. I was inconsistent. I was just like a picture here and there, really nothing substantial. And then it took me another year to get to 100,000 followers. So it's like, wow. So there was a really big jump in between year one and year two.
Yeah.
And the takeaway was learning to understand your audience. So I'd say that it took me about a year and a half from when I started to get my first brand deal, give or take.
That's a long time. Like people, if you told someone that at the start, they'll be like, no, I'm good. I won't even do it. I don't want to wait a year and a half.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. But it's a different landscape today, right?
Of course.
Today's day and age, there is a lot more opportunity.
Of course. You were probably like, did you see anyone else doing food content at that point?
A couple people, Miami locals, very close friends of mine these days. Well, not very close, but yeah, very close friends of mine these days. And it's just very nice to see how we've all grown throughout the years. But yeah.
And when you initially started, you're like, okay, I love photography, I love food. Let's put them together and just start posting. Did you ever have it in your head that like, you know what, this can maybe be a business? Did you ever even think about that? Or did you just like doing it so you kept doing it?
When I first started, no, I was doing it for the passion. I was doing it because I just genuinely loved food and photography and I just put them together and said, let's go. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that key takeaway number one, whatever you're doing, do it with passion, do it with intent, but not necessarily looking on how am I going to retire out of this, because and it's important to have an end goal. I think so. I think it's super important, but it's also very important to commit to what you're doing and to love what you're doing first.
Of course.
Everything else will fall into place.
Of course. Yeah. And I agree with that, especially when you want to build something that's long-term, long-lasting, a legacy, right? You're building a brand.
Right.
So to think, oh, I'm going to build this brand that's going to last 30 years, but I need to make money the first month.
Yeah. Exactly.
Crazy.
Yeah. It's As a matter of fact, I made $0 for a very long time before I started making anything substantial in order to be able to say, oh, wow, this is something that I could live off of.
Yeah.
Not to say that when you're building businesses, yes, absolutely. But the thing is that this started as a passion project. It didn't start as a with that.
But bro, most of the people that are successful, they say that at the beginning. It started because it was a passion.
Right, 100%.
Right, and that's what kept them through. Because if you weren't passionate about it, you weren't gonna go a year without getting paid. You would have been like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
You have to have the passion.
And I completely agree with what you're saying. And it wasn't only a year. It was because, I mean, again, not to get paid, but to make enough to be able to make a living out of it, right?
Yes.
That took 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 5 years until you said, now I can actually go full time with this.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because you weren't always Succulent Bite.
No.
You were a person before.
I was,
right?
yes. Yeah.
So talk about a little bit at the beginning of your journey.
Right.
Maybe, talk a little bit about what life was like as a kid, what you think influenced you to take this route. Start with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, look, I grew up in Madrid, in Spain. So I grew up fortunately as well, traveling the world with my mom and my dad. I come from a divorced household, so my parents have been divorced since I was little. But I always had the luck and the blessing that they would take me to discover new places, right? So I was always involved in different cultures, which would by default involve me in new different cuisines.
Yep.
And I always loved eating. At my house, food was the front and center of every day, like lunch or dinner, depending on the day of the week. It was always something special, right? So I always loved food, and I always appreciated the art of the culinary. So whenever we traveled, a lot of my experiences were based around that. It's like, what are we going to eat? Where are we going to go? This is so exciting. I love trying new flavors, new foods. And I think that's part of what influenced, who I am today as a content creator. And it's just, I've brought years of love for food, and I've just translated into something that I am passionate about, which is content creation, which is desserts, sweets, which is a lot of what you see today, right? Yeah. And
the sweets get me, bro. That's
right. Correct. 100%. But then going back to what you were saying before, I started at FIU when I first started. I was Nico at FIU, studying marketing, and I started Succulent Bite in parallel. I was junior or sophomore. Junior.
So you were taking marketing though?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I have a career in business administration, marketing, and sales.
Okay.
And when I graduated college, Succulent Bite was year 2. And again, we had 3.5 more years before I went independent, 2020.
Okay.
And then I started working at a pharmaceutical company. So I was in pharma sales.
While you were doing Succulent?
While I was doing Succulent Bite. So I did pharma sales 9 to 5 and Succulent 5 to 9 kind of thing. It was 24/7. Yeah.
Pharma sales?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, and I say this to everyone, at a young age to learn sales as a skill set.
Absolutely. I think that job was one of the most important moments in my career, because it taught me corporate structure. It taught me how to or customer relationship management. It taught me the basics and fundamentals of sales, understanding a problem, understanding how to add value, understanding the importance of uncovering problems before adding value.
Yes.
And it's just, the whole sales funnel. And I think that it allowed me, since I had to be in front of customers on a daily basis. And again, this was a very large pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
So the training was extensive. So it was great because it forced me to stand in front of customers on a daily basis and be fearless of asking for the business and understanding what their customer needs are, and just knocking on doors without fear of rejection. And those are all things that you apply later on throughout your career to either your own life or to your businesses. And it's just takeaway after takeaway.
Well, people look at sales and they think it's intimidating. You oh my God, I have to go or I have to door knock and talk to these people I don't know. And it's like, if you do that at an early age, the rest of your life, communication is so easy.
Completely agree.
Right? And you being on camera, me being on camera, right? Stuff like that comes more naturally to you.
Yeah.
Once you've kind of went through, adding sales to your skill set, right?
Yeah.
So how long were you doing the pharma stuff?
I was in pharma for 4 years.
Okay.
So, granted, I was a 22-year-old kid, right?
Wow.
Recently graduated with a passion for food and photography, doing Succulent Bite on the side. But then my full-time job during the day was pharma. And then 2020 came around, which is when the big TikTok boom came, right?
Yeah.
But it was coincidentally the year where I realized, okay, I'm ready to take the step. So I was probably 26 years old when I went full-time.
And what made you think that you were ready? Because a lot of people struggle to, is it the money? Is it my following size? Is it?
I think it was a nice balance of it all. Again, it was something very, very, it was a very educated decision, right? I didn't just wake up one day and said, oh, I think I should do this for a living. No, I had been working towards that goal for many years. Many years of self-doubt, many years of building the company for it to be structured the way that it had to be in order to be able to become full-time, right?
Of course.
So it had various components. One of them was money, for sure. Income was important. A big one was following size. Another big one was recurrency of business. Another big one was the security I had in myself, or in order to be able to say, I feel that I can do this, right? And shutting up that imposter syndrome, that little voice in your head that says,
he's on one side.
Yeah. Well, no, the answer is yes, you can. So, and that's when I said, I think it's time. I think I have everything that I need to have set up, and this is my moment to take the next step.
I think that part is so important. Like, you not needing anyone's approval to do it.
Yeah.
That's key, because you just looked inside yourself and you said, am I ready? I don't care if this guy thinks I'm ready or this person thinks I'm ready.
Yeah.
It's on me to decide that, right? And I think a lot of people, they get to that point, then they go have the conversation with their mom, and they're like, Mom, what do you think? Should I quit my job and go full-time as a content creator? And then and she's looking at you like, what did you just say? Go back to work, right? So I think people always look for that approval, right? And every time I hear that someone approved of themselves, that's when they took a huge step, right? And another thing is the 5 years you put in before you even made that decision.
Correct.
Which is insane. So you're doing pharma sales, and the whole time in the back of your mind, though, you're saying, this is for that dream.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
And you weren't really falling in love, let's say, with the money per se. You were more just like, I love the fact that I can do food all day as my job.
Exactly. For me, it was always about being independent and being an entrepreneur.
Okay.
What did that entail is
Yeah.
what I was discovering and what I keep discovering every day, right?
Okay.
Because there's always new opportunities that arise and new things that come. I will touch back on something that you mentioned before. Parents. You said parents. I think having a strong support system is very important because there is a lot of self-doubt at the beginning as an entrepreneur where you're getting started. I think even as seasoned entrepreneur, you can ask any of these magnates and around the world, and there is always some sort of, self-doubt. But I think with time, you understand that being an entrepreneur is taking a lot of losses and then just hitting a few home runs, right?
Yeah,
and I think
it might take a long time.
Yeah, it might take a long time. But that's what, going back to Gary Vee, that's a lot of what he preaches is precisely that. It's like, it can be scary, but with tenacity and by grinding and sticking to it, you can pull through and you can achieve, you can accomplish.
And I think even at a time that you did it where it wasn't really proven yet
No,
to be a real
100%,
job. Now
100%.
people that are 17, 18, they look at you and they're like, oh, it could be a real job.
It could be a real job. Yeah,
Right?
yeah, totally.
But
Yeah,
like
and
you were kind of
Yeah.
paving the way in this new social world. So for sure you were like, bro, is this even going to work? Like a kid today is like, oh, it's going to work.
Oh yeah, because it's a proven concept. There's classes on social media marketing and entrepreneurship now at universities. My parents, thank God, they were very supportive of what I wanted.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Like, while you were doing this, were you telling people around you what the goal was? Like, were you saying, hey, Mom, I'm doing this so that actually I could do this?
Yeah, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. I think my very close group of friends knew, and including my parents, of course. And I think both my mom and my dad always said, you know what, look, I think as long as you're living out your dream and you're doing it in an organized and structured way, go for it. True. Go for it. Learn, try, explore, because that could change the rest of your life. Don't necessarily play it safe if that's not what you want to do. If what you want to do is go for it.
Were they entrepreneurs?
No, actually, no.
But to have that mindset it's
because usually that's why I admire it so much, because
when you come from that old school background, it's hard to break unless one of them became an entrepreneur.
Totally. Well, totally. But the thing is that, both my mom and my dad, they both held very high positions in corporate America.
Okay.
And my mom actually took the step and became an entrepreneur herself.
Wow.
Eventually, but this was years after, all these conversations that we had. Yeah.
So 5 years, you're grinding, you're thinking, you're dreaming, right? Yeah. Then you finally say, okay, it's time to incorporate. Yes. It's time to do this. Mm-hmm. And you're just a solo owner. You don't have partners or anything.
Correct. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you start the business. What's the vision at the beginning and what's the plan? Like, how are you going to make money? I know you mentioned a few things, longer term clients, maybe bigger clients, but what's really the plan? What are you saying? Okay, I'm about to do this. Now this is the first step. I have to do this.
Back in, like, when I was just getting started?
Yeah, when you decided to take the leap and say, this is my job.
Oh, when I decided to take the leap, I already had that set up.
Okay, so then...
Yeah, so I was building it for the past 5 years.
Okay, so then how about when in that 5 years does this start becoming like, there's a lot of clients coming my way. I'm doing something right. If I can make a recipe out of this, I could go full time.
Correct.
Okay.
I'd say about two years in, 2.5 years into it. So in that 5 year span, year 2.5, two-ish, I'd say, I said, look, there is definitely an opportunity here. I think if we cater to the right audience, if we continue to grow the audience the way and just kind of understanding what they want to see, creating my community, right? Because at the end of the day, what I have is a beautiful community of people who are there to watch my content and support. Everything else is secondary. My primary focus is always catering to my audience, and then understanding that when brand deals started to roll in, I said, okay, so how are we going to keep evolving, keep creating content that's relevant, that's fun, that's entertaining, and that brands want to invest in advertising space, right? So, and that's kind of like the business side of the creator economy, which which it is what it is, right? It's
course.
what we know today.
Of course.
But I was kind of discovering that, agencies who represented brands and brought in influencers and connected them were just starting to come out.
True.
They were just the big ones that you might know today. They were just starting to, well, not that came from entertainment, but the ones that were just purely social media driven ad agencies. And then I started realizing, okay, so I have to establish good relationships with these agencies and provide them value every time that we work together for recurrency.
Yes.
And this is how I started growing and building and saying, okay, it's important to do this before I take that step.
So at first, the kind of collaborations you were doing was like, hey, Nico, maybe here's this product, included in your video. That's like something that they would ask for.
Correct. Yeah. Possibly.
Or like come visit our restaurant. Like what was a?
Yeah, I'd say that the majority of the deals or the brand partnerships that I've been fortunate to work with, they've been through agencies. Yeah. So they say, look, for example, let's say, create content around this burger. Cool. Here's the creative brief. This is the points that we have to hit. How are we going to bring this to life? Let's create a concept. Let's do this together. Okay. And then the piece of content goes live, and that's what you see.
So at the beginning, because now when I look at your page, I'm like, oh, this guy's a chef. Like he's cooking or he's doing recipes. Right. So at the beginning, was it like that as well?
Oh, I understand your question.
Right?
No, when I started doing restaurant reviews. So I would actually go around Miami and travel and just take viral food videos, which you probably saw at some point in time, because I wouldn't say one of the first ones, but I was one of the first ones to start doing, dessert food porn, if you will, right? Okay. Where I was like scooping into desserts and just getting the chocolate melt and whatever. Yeah. And that was kind of my staple back then, way before, back in like 2018, if you will, 2017. Okay. And then, years pass, and then I start seeing pandemic hits. Yeah. And I say, well, I can't go out and create content at restaurants. Yeah. So, the TikTok starts coming up, and then it's like, oh, there's trends going around like, oh, you should create cereal out of cookies. I'm like, I'm like, okay, let's try it out. And that was my first, dip into creating food content at home. Wow. And then I started realizing, wow, there's a lot I can do here, because I can just start learning how to bake the desserts I've always loved to bake, right? Yeah. Or enjoy, and bring them to life on screen. And that's how I started with my cheesecake series, for example. I self-taught how to make what I consider is a delicious cheesecake. And then I made 40 variations out of that and said, what else can we come up with? And that was my first approach into cooking and baking at home.
So it's all self-taught.
Yeah.
And I think a key point you said that a lot of content creators need to take into consideration is that you said, okay, pandemic hit, and you adapted your content.
Yes.
You adapted.
I did.
You didn't just sit there and say, well, all the restaurants are closed,
so let's just not do anything. No, absolutely
I'm finished,
not.
right? Or I'll just wait, right? Which a lot of people did.
Yeah.
But I could imagine you adapting like that. How much did you grow during the pandemic, man?
Oh, so much, man. Right? I went from 500,000 to 1.2 in 2 years.
And you didn't have an ego about it. You're not like, I'm not cooking. I'm only doing stuff when they pay me to go. And
no, absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Right? But I'm saying these are real
and
problems.
I'll tell you this much. Restaurants weren't paying me necessarily to go to the restaurant. I did that because I just loved the content. As a matter of fact, I was, not always, but at the beginning especially, I was the one, I went to the place, I paid for everything, and I said, okay, now I'm going to go and film it.
That's key, bro.
Yeah, man.
And I tell that to everyone. They come to me, they're like, Ernesto, I want to be a food blogger, right? But no one wants to pay me because I have 1,000 followers. Bro, just go pay, and do the content.
You got to hustle.
You do that for like, you could do it a couple of weeks at this point. Yeah. Then restaurants are going to say, oh, thanks for that. Cool. Yeah. You see it in the story, in the DMs. Oh, thanks for tagging us. Appreciate that. But you took it on your own to say, I'm going to invest in myself because this is what I want to do, right? So even at that point, you're saying not everyone was paying you. You were doing stuff just out of the love of the content and building a resume.
I'd say the majority of the content you see is out of love for the art and for the passion of cooking and baking and just putting good content out.
True.
It's just that, obviously with time, the economy started developing and welcoming that new concept of marketing, right? Of social media marketing.
Of course. Yeah. Well, I remember the pandemic, like everyone became a baker all of a sudden.
Yeah. I was one of them. Right. But I think that the key thing there is to understand the importance of being able to pivot and understanding that if it's not working, then reinvent. And if it's and then reinvent and just pivot, because that's how people go obsolete. Or people or businesses, in general. Yeah. If you don't pivot, if if you put your ego in front, like you were saying before, and said, "Oh no, this is what I do. These are the things that I know how to do." Well, no, and there is not a market for that. They need to know how to switch it up,
Of course.
and make
And
something.
imagine you never adapted.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly.
That would have been insane, right?
Yeah.
And this might be like maybe a silly question to you, but how do you monetize off the cooking content or the baking content that
Right.
you create?
Yeah. Well, I partner with amazing brands that I've worked with for years.
Okay.
And we create.
And these are like ingredients and stuff like that?
Yeah, for
Okay.
example, it could be like Betty Crocker, right? So they say, there was a couple of years ago, I remember they said, Nico, we want to create videos that showcase our cake mixes. So let's come up with a line of things or desserts that use our cake mixes creatively. Wonderful.
Cool.
It's product placement. Yeah.
True. Okay, so you're doing that, and then I guess at that point you've adapted to that content, so you're like, I don't really want to go review restaurants that much.
On the contrary, I'd say that here's what happened.
Okay.
I started focusing on the cooking at home content.
Yeah.
But then I realized, again, once everybody was out and about again, and everybody was back into their daily routines, cooking content is not necessarily all that they wanted to see.
True.
So it's like, again, pivot back a little bit more
Okay.
to where you were before, because now it could be interesting to see places around the world. It's refreshing. You got to keep it refreshing. For me, it's refreshing. I sometimes say, what else am I going to show that's exciting for me, just as it's going to be for my audience?
Okay.
Since, once again, my priority is to cater to my audience, what else can I create that's fun, that's engaging? So, for example, 2 days ago, we went to Aventura Mall and we filmed their viral chocolate strawberries with pistachio butter that they have. It's a stand that they're putting up on the weekends. The video's coming up soon. It's delicious. I mean, it's fantastic.
I can imagine.
And it's just super satisfying to watch.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised. It's those videos that sometimes provide the craziest results. So, for example, we were in Croatia once and we were filming... we're walking around and we saw a gelateria. It's called Gelateria Emiliana. And we said, okay, let's go check it out. That's cute. It's a cute gelateria. And I took out my phone. The gentleman, I told him, I want this flavor and this flavor. He says, wonderful. He grabs the cone and he just dips it into a chocolate fountain. Then he adds the gelato and then he hands it over. And I filmed it. I'm like, cool. This is great. It was delicious. Well, that video had 100 million views. Yeah.
And you're just like, let's just do something cool quick while
100
we're...
million views. Bro.
Wow.
I've shared that video a couple of times and it's 50 million views, 70 million views. It's one of those things that there's just components to that video that just make it very, eye-catching.
True.
And that's precisely what I mean when I say it has to be a balance between adding value in your content and entertainment.
True.
So that's why, yes, cooking at home and baking at home is my primary focus, but I also dab into going into around places.
And that doesn't really, I would say that doesn't affect your audience. It's not like two different niches.
No.
Because it's just food, right?
It's food.
So do you believe like food is like, if you do anything under food, you're good?
To a certain extent.
Okay.
To a certain extent. I said yes.
Because we talk a lot about niche too, right? Like having that sort of niche. And that's why, for sure, during the pandemic, when you were doing the cooking ones, you probably were skyrocketing.
Right.
Because you were hitting that niche so hard, right?
100%.
But that's why I'm just interested because, a lot of people talk about the algorithm on Instagram and now you have to be super niche over and over and over again, right? But you don't find that a problem.
Well, I think my niche is food. Then you can have like a super niche, which is cooking and baking, or restaurant reviews, or whatever it is, dry freezing food. I mean, there's a lot of really cool things you can be doing.
Okay.
But I think that yes, I stick to my food of niche. I rarely do like, for example, lifestyle content. You'll rarely see me just posing cute in the street, like, "Hey, what's up?" No, I mean, I'd love to, but no, I mean, this is not what my audience is there to see.
True.
Every once in a while, I share like life milestones as an in-feed post, like, we I don't know, got married, so it's like very exciting. So that would be a lifestyle content that I would put out, but it's very specific moments. If not, I'm just sticking to what my audience wants to see and what I feel that they want to get value out of.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then initially, like when you said, and I think this can apply to like food, fashion, it can apply to a bunch of stuff, right? When you said, hey, I'm going to these restaurants on my own, filming them on my own, they don't have to pay me, they don't have to do nothing.
Right.
When you were doing that though, there was calculation behind it, right? Like are you messaging the owners after, or the manager or the restaurant on Instagram saying, hey, would love to do something together? Like what's the process of initially building your network and clientele list? Because I think a lot of people struggle at that point because maybe they don't have all the followers yet.
Right.
You know, I don't want to talk to you, Nico, because you only have 10,000 followers. Come
Right.
back when you have 500,000.
Right.
But the question I ask is, what were you doing initially to form those relationships and say, okay, guys, I might have 10,000 followers, but we'll talk in 6 months.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about what the game plan was from there, because like I said, I think that applies for food, fashion, same thing. If you want to be a fashion blogger,
Right.
and you want to get a brand's attention,
Yes.
go to the store, buy all their clothes, and start making content about
Try
it.
on hauls, do, I don't know, walk around the street, do the videos,
There
do the
you go.
trends,
Just
do whatever it
pretend
is.
they pretend they worked with you at that point until they start.
Well, look, I'll tell you this. You don't even have to pretend that they work with you. There's no reason to just say, oh,
True.
yeah, thank you to this brand when they didn't. It's fine. But what I will, vouch for is create your own portfolio. And yes, at the beginning, if you might get a lot of no's.
Yeah.
But when you start showing what you can do, then there's gonna be knocks on your door saying, "Hey, we want to do this with you more often. We want to invite you to this." So how did I start my clientele list? Well, I wouldn't call it my clientele list because restaurants necessarily were not.
You know what I mean? Like your network of restaurants and brands that you work with.
Right. Well, again, when I started, I just went out, purchased my own food, and just filmed and did the videos. I think based on what I just like. It started growing and started gaining attention from other places. And then they started inviting me to, hey, we'd love to have you over and film whatever you want. And then dinner's on us. I'm like, okay, cool, exciting.
So it starts with free food.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. So at the very beginning, right?
Yeah.
And I will tell you this, though. I never posted something that I didn't truly enjoy or believe in.
Though. That's key.
Yeah. Because I get that a lot. It's like, oh, so you'll just post anything? No.
Especially in the food world, bro. Because
Yeah.
like if you're saying something's really good and with your following, 1,000 people go in the next day.
Yeah. No. Well, if you see it, it's because I've truly enjoyed it, and it's such a an abstract concept, right? It's like, are you gonna like the same things I do? Well, the answer is maybe yes, maybe no.
True.
But that's why I also always kept my reviews or my videos positive. I've always been a very positive person.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily am the one that's gonna be spreading the bad news. No. I just like to spread out good stuff that's feel good, that people are going to enjoy, that I enjoy. So it's authentic. I'm super authentic with everything I post. And if people enjoy it, wonderful. If people don't enjoy it, that's okay. But I was doing my best to provide the best value for them.
True. And I think over time as well, like even myself, for example, like over time following you and watching your content, I'm like, oh, we like the same shit.
Yeah,
I can tell.
Literally, yeah.
Right? So I think even over time, they're like, okay, if Nico said that, I trust it because I've seen all the stuff he's posted and I trust his judgment already. Right?
Exactly.
And even talk about pricing. When you start making money as a content creator, and a lot of people have trouble doing this. What do I charge?
Right.
How do I come up with this? I've never come up with this before. And what if I say a number, but I could have asked for triple and they would have said yes? Or you know what I mean? So when it came down to pricing your collaborations and these deliverables that you're doing for brands, how did you manage that?
I learned by tripping and hitting myself with every wall possible. Yeah. Because again, it was not invented. There was not a rule of thumb as to what you should be getting paid or not be getting paid. Yeah. To the day, I think you find your sweet spot. I think you start understanding what different brands you start understanding the different budgets that different brands may have depending on their size, depending on the scope of work, depending on exclusivity clauses, depending on content volume. And once you understand that, you can start fine-tuning, I'm going to do this for this much, this for this much. They say yes, they say no, they said too little, they said yes right away, maybe there was room for a little bit more. They say absolutely not, oh, that was maybe totally way too expensive. And then you start kind of learning and fine-tuning give or take what it is that you can be charging, right?
True.
And but it's trial and error. I think that in today's day and age, I read an article sometime somewhere that said a rule of thumb was you can charge 1 cent per follower or something like that. I don't know how accurate that is in today's day. It depends because it depends.
It even depends because audience, the type of audience, right?
It depends on the type of audience. It depends on the client. It also depends on the campaign. It depends on your own strategies. Like, am I willing to maybe do a little bit less for a campaign just so that I can build a strong relationship with a brand? The answer, if you ask me, is yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely. I'm all about building relationships, not necessarily only contracts.
Yeah.
Because relationships are what will last you for a lifetime. And that for me is the biggest investment you can make. It's investment in a relationship.
Of course, right? So, okay, so you start making some good money, you got some good clients, and you're doing everything yourself.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah.
You're not thinking, maybe I'm going to get an editor. Or
No. Oh, no. At that point, no. At the beginning? No, no, absolutely no. I was answering all my emails. I was up all night.
You're the lawyer,
editing,
you're the accountant.
Everything. Yeah.
But it's important, right? Because
Absolutely.
like you have to take that approach to it until you're in a position to be doing better, I guess.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Until you're in a position that you can, well, if you will, afford to outsource.
Okay.
Yeah. Or you can actually, well, there's different approaches you can take. You can do it all yourself just to have full control. But then the opposite side is, but you're giving up all your time. So again, up to what extent are you going to begin to delegate? And learning to delegate, I think, is one of the hardest things you can do, because especially when you're building your own thing, it's like, damn, nobody can do it like I do. And the answer is yes. The answer is there's other people in the world that can do it.
It's your baby, bro. You don't trust people with it. You're like, you're going to screw everything up.
Absolutely. And
right?
And I'm a big fan of staying like grounded. Just because you're good at what you do doesn't mean there's nobody else better than you. There is always somebody better. I mean, unless you're like a pro athlete and there's specific things, right? True. But in general, as a general rule of thumb, there's always somebody that can probably do it better than you. And the reason why it's so important to keep that in mind is so that you can learn to delegate and learn to gain back control of your time, so you can do other activities that will give you stability as an entrepreneur, whether it's developing new businesses, or whether it's meditating or jogging or going to yoga or spending time with your friends and your family or traveling the world, whatever that extra time you want to allocate to something else is, because everything in life is not just business. There has to be a balance to everything, right? Mental health is super important, and that's something I am a big fan of, and something that I pay very close attention to, along with my wife. And so I think learning to delegate is a key point in order to be able to expand and grow.
It's like one of those things that once you do it once, you can it kind of opens up the flood. Okay, I can trust more than just myself, you know? And okay, this is more on the client side of things. Why do you think you had clients coming to you earlier on? Obviously now it's obvious, right? Why do you think they were coming to you? But why also, like, what were you doing to retain them? And why I'm asking this is like, when I first started my agency, I would always go above and beyond for every client. If they wanted this, I would do that and this. Right? Just to make them super happy, right? I
agree.
So talk about the start of the client list that you're building, and how you're retaining them, and why you think they wanted to keep working with you. What brought them back to Nico?
Well, I think that it goes back to my sales training, right? And it's all back to CRM. So it's like, how are you going to make sure that you're providing the best version of yourself to the client, that you're providing the best quality work, that you're consistent, that you deliver on time, that you provide them a good customer experience. And that was always my one priority. Okay. It is to today's day. You can ask any of the people I've worked with. I rarely deliver a project, late or don't follow, but no, I always follow the brand guidelines. I always try to make myself available for corrections. I always try to make myself available for, Zoom calls and delivering on time and providing insights and adding a little extra value and saying, you know what, we did this, let's add this as well, and that's on me, so that we can, just kind of add a little extra. And it's just building that nice relationship with your clients, I think, is what builds longevity in partnerships. Yeah. I'm all about longevity in partnerships because I think that it's more authentic. I think that it adds value to the brand. It adds value to the creator. It adds value to the audience. It builds consistency. And these are things that, I value. So that's why that's always my main focus is I want to make sure that my clients are happy with the work that they're receiving. Yeah. I take it very seriously. And yeah.
Well, I think and again, speaking as an agency owner now, it just sounds like you're so easy to work with. Like, it's like, we have this campaign coming. Nico's going to take care of it. We know he's going to listen to the guidelines. We know it's going to be done on time. Right. And we know it's going to be top quality because it's his work. Right. So I think you just made it easy for people to work with you.
Well, I hope so.
Especially those big brands that sometimes it's a third party agency representing them.
Right. Correct.
They can look bad at the end of the day if they choose the wrong person.
Exactly. And that's another big one. It's like, if there is an agency representing one of these brands that we're working with for a campaign, I want to make sure that they're delivering their end of the deal to their client on time as well.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win for everybody. It's synergy. It's good camaraderie, and it's just
And for the creators out there, wondering maybe why some brands aren't working with you or you're not getting a lot of brand deals, just be easier to work with. Like don't, especially at the beginning. I'm talking about at the start. Now, for sure, you've built a strong brand, millions of followers. You could be pickier with what you do, right?
I suppose. In what sense do you mean?
Like if you don't want to take on a client, you don't have to.
Correct. Well, but I do.
Or like, let's say, go above and beyond like you did at the beginning.
No. Above and beyond, I still go above and beyond.
Okay.
You got to stick to your core
You're
values.
just a solid guy, though. That's
you got
why.
to stick to your core values, my man. You got to stick to your core values.
No, but what I'm trying to say is that like, and again, it goes back to your sales.
Yes.
You're kind of putting yourself in the shoes of the agency of these brands that are working with you, and you're saying what they want to see.
Yes.
Correct. It's important, right?
It's very important.
It's not all about what you want and this is how I want to do things. And you're working with people,
right?
You kind of have to have an open mind about it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, but no, I think that to touch back on what you were saying before. No, I think that being your best self is something that you can't just get comfortable and be, oh no, I'm just not gonna. No, I don't half-ass anything that I do. Everything that I do is done with intent, and it's done on time, and it's done with commitment. And yeah, that's just how I operate.
Well,
yeah.
Listen, it makes sense. That's what brands want to work with people like that. Right. That's amazing though. Like a lot of the people that come to me, they're just like, Ernesto, like I worked with this one brand, and they never called me back, or they never hit me back after I posted, or they don't want to work with me anymore. I'm like,
happens.
I'm like,
it's okay. It's okay.
But I'll go, like what happened, whatever, and like how was the content? Let me see the content, or I posted it a bit late, and then this happened. I told them it was going to go out on November 5th. It went out on 7th. I'm like, oh, dude, you're done.
Yeah.
That's how many content creators there are out there? Sometimes you only get one chance when that brand reaches out to you.
And that's just a life lesson in general. Sometimes you only get one chance to prove your worth.
Yes.
And that's why you always have to bring your A game.
Of course. So we continue the story now.
Plus, it's a big responsibility. They're hiring you for something. You have to, yeah.
Especially the brands that you're working with, like they're massive. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying, treat the small brand different than the big brand.
Not.
That's not what I'm saying at all.
Absolutely not.
I'm saying, but the pressure kind of intensifies
right.
when you're dealing with, Coca-Cola.
Right.
Or a huge brand, right?
Right.
It's like, okay, I really got to pay attention here. Okay, so your story's going on, and we talked a little bit off camera about this, but you kind of did like an ad agency or like a content agency out of your brand, correct?
Yes.
Because we were talking, and there's some content that you create for brands that isn't living on your pages. It actually lives on theirs.
Yes, correct.
So when did that avenue open up for you?
In the recent years, I think that some brands said, you know what, we just want you to create some, if you will, white label content for us to use across or we want you to create this ad, but it doesn't have to run on your pages. It'll run on our pages. I'm like, okay. Wow. It's just a really cool. I feel very humble when they ask me that, because that means that they just purely like the talent and the work.
Which is huge. It's not about your following.
No, it's not about the audience.
Crazy.
It's about the quality of work, and that for me is very humbling. I every time I get one of those, I'm like, oh, that's so exciting. I'm like, okay, cool, absolutely, I can produce whatever you want. So it's just they're hiring you for the production, and I think I think it installs another chip of another avenue. You're like, oh, look at that. That's
what I mean, right?
It's a different opportunity.
So are you thinking now like you could do something in the content agency world or the marketing agency world?
Well, I don't like to shut my doors to any opportunities, right? But it's not necessarily something I'm actively looking. I'm not necessarily actively looking to start an agency, as much as I am perhaps to partnering with brands who do want me to create that way. Like, I'd say if the opportunities come, I'll provide the content that they're asking, but it's not necessarily something that I'm seeking to build on the side.
Well, I'm sure, and the more you grow, the more opportunities come your way. That's how the social media world works.
Right.
And I'm sure people even ask you like, yo, like, do you do social media? Do you do this? Do you do that? Because all your stuff is top notch, right?
Right.
They work with you on one thing, then they're just like, oh, why don't you just do this? Or why don't we do this together? And then that's when the doors start opening, right?
Yes.
And talking about doors opening, right? You had your cookbook as well.
Yes.
Right? So talk about that a bit, because again, you're and I love this. You're a creator. You have one avenue, but then you're looking and you're like, okay, who's my audience? What do they like? Can I create another product? And
Correct.
that's what you were thinking.
Correct,
Right?
yes.
Which is really good. So talk
Yeah.
about the cookbook and how that came to life.
So the cookbook was an opportunity that just it landed kind
came
of
to you?
on my lap. Yeah.
Sick.
So the publisher said, "Hey, look, we want to make a cookbook with you," and I said, "Sure, let's do it. Let's try it." And it was my first time doing a cookbook, and I had no idea what I was doing.
Okay.
And I sat down, and I started putting together the recipes that I had been creating for the past years. I'm like, okay, and we put it together a cookbook, and it went on sale, and it was wonderful. And I was like,
Yeah.
it was the first time that I was launching a product of my own,
Yeah.
other than the digital product,
Of
which
course.
you see on the daily
Yeah.
basis. But it was this new physical, tangible product where people were going to be able to have a piece of succulent bite at home, and
Yeah.
that honestly for me was a huge milestone because
course.
it had always been a dream of mine to be able to do that.
True.
But more importantly, it expanded me as an entrepreneur. Again, that was one of the avenues. I'm always seeking opportunity to see what else I can be creating, what else I can be doing within my space, right? Which is my passion. It going back to my passions is the food space, the hospitality space, and that's kind of where it's at. Yeah.
And what did you learn about your first product? Because again, going back to it, influencers, creators out there with an audience,
Right.
they don't really know where to start and say, okay, well, I have this audience, but I don't know what product I should sell them. And again, they came to you with the idea, right?
Right.
But I'm sure you would have came up with the idea sooner or later, right?
Probably.
So what advice would you have for them when it comes to like, okay, I have the digital side. I'm getting sponsorships. I'm getting collaborations. I'm getting paid well. I feel like I should have a physical product as well. What advice would you give them now that you've, kind of had your own, sold it, and it's been going well?
I'd say get together a great and excellent team
Okay.
for whatever product it is that you're trying to launch. Do your research first. Make sure that there is a want for that. There's a market for it, right? Assuming that, and then just market the hell out of it, man.
Yeah.
Good PR and good marketing. That's
True.
all you need. Because again, it's a consumer goods saturated market. There's a ton of products being launched every day. So focus on the key differentiators that are going to make your product special, and go for it, man.
And I like it because, I'm the type of guy that I don't like relying on one stream of income.
Correct.
I rather have 5 that are all doing very well than one that's doing excellent.
Right.
Right? So I think that's how you're looking at it now. You're like, okay, I have the digital, physical, and we're going to get into the other stuff too that you're doing.
Correct.
And I love the way you look at that because you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yes.
Right? And at this point, doors are flying open for you and you're just picking, okay, this one fits, this one doesn't. Right? So let's talk about the hospitality entrance that you made, right? You have a restaurant now?
Yes.
In Wynwood.
Yes.
Lovely area.
Wonderful area.
How did that come to life? And, first of all, congrats.
Thank you.
Because the fact that a door like that can open through social media speaks volumes.
It
bro.
does.
Right?
Does. It's wonderful. It
Insane.
was a wonderful opportunity that, well, look, the 2 founding managing partners, which are Sam and Gabby, they're wonderful, wonderful people. They approached us, which is my wife and I said, hey guys, look, we're coming up with this concept. We had spoken with them before. I said, hey, look, at some point we would love to do something with you guys if you guys were to, create another opportunity, another venture. And they came to us and said, look, here's an opportunity for you guys to be a part of if you'd like to take it. And we said, absolutely yes.
Sick.
And the reason why we said yes, there's 2 key components to that decision. The first one is that we invest in the management behind a project. Okay. I think the idea can be fantastic, but the execution has to be impeccable and the people behind it have to be top of the line, especially when it comes to restaurants, which is such a volatile industry. I mean, it is what it is. It is. And it could be amazing or it could not. But at least you're taking a calculated risk by investing in the right people or in people that at least align with what you believe is good people to invest in, right?
Course.
So that's the first one. And the second one was that the idea was great because because it's a pasta bar. So it's a wonderful pasta bar. It's in Wynwood. It's called Otto and Pepe, and it's there's nothing like it nearby. I mean, there's a couple other pasta places, but with that vibe, with that atmosphere, with that story behind it, it's very unique. And I think that's why we've been so blessed to have lots of press coverage and it's been packed, knock on wood, somewhere we'll find wood here, and hopefully it will continue to be, packed for the coming years. But
of course.
But yeah, it's a wonderful concept that.
So that's something you want to. Do you think that that's something that you'll dive into more, the restaurant space?
Absolutely, given the opportunity, which I hope I do have the opportunity to do it, and to partner with the right people. I think the most important thing you can look for in a business is good partners. If you have good partners and good people behind projects, I think everything else will be a byproduct of that. It's the same thing as having passion for a company or for a project that you're building. Everything else will fall into place if you're committed, if you're disciplined, if you're tenacious, and if you have clear goals and clear ideas in mind. And in this case, it's the people behind the project. Yeah.
And what role are you playing in this? Like what's your role in this restaurant?
Yeah. Well, so we helped out. Well, we're helping out a lot with what comes to be marketing.
Okay.
And of course, they have I'm there fully supporting the restaurant on social.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, so what a good job.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's fantastic.
I would want 10 restaurants where that's my role,
Right.
Do you ever, talking about, because now you're seeing hospitality, you saw physical product, you see the digital, right? And I hear this a lot too, but I want to know your take on this. Do you ever worry that, with the digital world, one day the sponsors are going to stop coming, or one day this is going to stop, or one day, all the money being spent on socials will stop? Like, does that ever worry you?
Look, again, as part of the, I think you have to, it's a good question. I think that it's something I have thought about in the past. Obviously, I think it would be foolish not to be aware that I don't take anything for granted.
Yeah,
I'll start there. I don't take anything for granted. I think that the blessings that we have, we hope that we have always. But yes, if the landscape changes, then we have to pivot with the landscape. And one thing that Gary Vee said once, and I quote him a lot because I did study a lot of what he was saying back when I was becoming a full-time entrepreneur. I love this guy.
Yeah.
And one thing he said is, if all social media shuts down, the attention is going to have to shift somewhere else. And in that somewhere else is where we'll have to be.
True.
Right?
True.
So that's kind of like my take on it. So I continuously look out for new and upcoming relevant platforms, if you will.
Yeah.
I try to keep my content refreshing. I try to make sure that I'm always on my A game and pivoting wherever it needs to be pivoted. But I understand that, you control the controllables. Control providing good quality content. Control being disciplined and being committed to the customers and your clients that you work with, or the brand partnerships that you work with, and control the commitment they have to other projects that you have. Yeah. And if you're committed on those ends and you're giving it your best, then I think that everything else kind of rolls into place. So,
and I think you're making the right moves too, like taking on these different opportunities, hospitality, physical product. I think it's all very smart because like you're just planting seeds.
Exactly.
You never know what can happen, right? Maybe one day you're full hospitality.
Yeah.
Right. And
I'm not opposed to that. I'm learning as I go. Again, this is a conversation we have today. We can talk again in 5 years and see how it went. I mean, we're here, we're learning, we're discovering, we're kind of figuring it out with a plan, with a strategy, but we're figuring it out. And I think that's kind of what makes it exciting, right?
Of course. Yeah. I think, like I said, I think you've done a great job, man, because a lot of people wouldn't take those opportunities. They're scared. It's a risk. And like I said, the more seeds that you can plant and leverage your brand, if you can say that you have a social media that grew to 1 million followers, and that social media opened up doors for you to have ownership of products, ownership of wow.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. So, and then now go back 5 years, not making enough money. And now you're looking at it like, oh, people are calling me nonstop.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's how it works, man. It's really like things happen quickly, right? You work for a long time and then things start moving very fast after that.
They do. It's a blessing for sure.
And even in terms of the restaurant, like I want to talk about Miami a bit because this is your home base. You're killing it here. What do you think about Miami? Do you think Miami's helped you grow as a creator? And what do you think about the future of Miami?
I think that Miami is an ever-growing city. I think that we've seen a huge boom, obviously, over the past. I mean, Miami today is not the same Miami we had 15 years ago. I mean, granted. But I think that it's a city that is very diverse. It's very fast-moving. It's continuously growing. It's becoming more of a hub, even more than what it already is. Yeah. So I think it's an excellent place to be. When I went to college, I decided to stay in Miami. I got accepted into a few other universities. Not that many other universities. You'd be surprised. I was good in school, but there was a lot of things that I could have gotten accepted into a lot more colleges. But yeah, I decided to stay local because I wanted to live out the city. I wanted to grow in the city that I considered home. And I moved here in 2008, and then we're in 2024. It's today's date, and we're still here. And I think that it was the right move for me.
Of course,
I've been growing with the city. I've expanded and built my career here, and that's something that I always figured is what I needed to do.
This to me, this is the creator hub.
Correct.
It's the new LA. Of North America.
Yeah, you have people coming from all over the world, from all over the U.S., starting there, and then from all over the world, obviously. It's a melting pot. It's an ever-growing melting pot, and I think it's wonderful.
It's going to continue to be this way, I think, for at least the next 10 years. Creators here, business here, hospitality here. I just talk about Miami a lot because I'm from Canada, so I always have to explain, what's so good about Miami?
You got to come experience it.
You got to come and you got to stay for a little while, and enjoy it. You also mentioned that you're working on some kids. Hopefully soon. You're married, but no kids.
No kids yet.
How do you think? And I ask this to a lot of guys too that are married. How do you think marriage has helped you in your career?
Well, I'll tell you this. I think my number one supporter in absolutely anything I do is my wife, Ariana. Yeah. So big shout out to Ariana.
Big shout out.
She is my inspiration in everything I do. She is my number one fan, my number one supporter. She helps me pull through when I think I can't. And aspects of life, whether it's personal, whether it's business, whether it's whatever it is. She's my biggest supporter. She believes in me 100%. If I tell her, look, we have this idea, she helps me make it even better. I mean, it's really a teamwork, a synergistic teamwork that we have. Mm-hmm. So how has marriage impacted my life and in general? I think that it has been the biggest blessings of them all. Was being able to be married to the right person. I'll tell you this to anybody really. Is marrying the right person, marrying hopefully somebody who's gonna, and by the way, this is mutual, right? It's not like, I'm just here getting all the good stuff. And I support her too, but I want to shed some light on her, and not I'm like, Nico, you're so great husband. Yeah, sure. But also, it's reciprocal. Reciprocality is key. So I'll tell you that it's been the biggest blessing because she's my teammate in everything.
Yeah. But just to touch on that, because you said it's important to find what made you feel like she was the right person?
Oh man, I've known her for a long time.
Okay, so she was there from.
When we met in college, we weren't really looking to date each other. We were on different things, doing different things, right? And then we re-encountered 5 years later. So we re-encountered later, like in 2018. And it was immediate chemistry. I mean, it was just good chemistry. And the reason why, and you're asking me, what made me decide that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her? The answer is, it's very simple for me. And it's that our core values as a couple, respect, love, being there for each other, being loyal to each other, and just being kind to each other. Those core values being family oriented. I don't know. Those are core values that we align with. This is personal,
of course.
I'm just sharing with you and the world, I guess. But here we are, right? I mean, you're asking, so
I gotta humanize you a bit.
You gotta, for sure, exactly. I mean, there's always, and those core values that we both share is what I consider makes us soulmates. And hopefully,
I think once you're aligned on those core values, nothing else can really affect that bond.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. And we've always been on the same page about everything. It's crazy, man. That's like telling you, that's the biggest blessings of them all.
Of course. I want to do like a little bit of some fun stuff here, but more so value for the audience too. I'm gonna give you like a scenario, and then I would want your advice on it as a content creator. If someone has 0 followers, but they have a new niche idea, what's the first thing that they should do building their online presence and audience?
I think they should start pushing out content for that new niche idea, whether it's a product or it's a service. Create content and push it every single day.
Okay.
Why do I say every single day? Because it's a saturated market. There's a lot of content going around, and you never know what piece of content is going to really resonate with your audience, and you learn that by trial and error. So the same example I gave before, the next video you post could be the 100 million view video, which could change if you're starting, it could change the trajectory of your following count, if you will, or your audience for your specific product, and you find your niche and you build an audience for your niche.
Now, I'm going to ask you, on top of that, I'm going to say, okay, Nico, that sounds good. I'm down. Should I show my face or should I not show my face?
It depends. I like to say show your face. And the reason why I like to say show your face is that you're giving a human approach, a human touch to the brand.
Yep.
I'd say don't necessarily, it's a slippery slope because there's ego gets in the way, right? So you're like, should I show my face all the time? Do I want to make them fall in love with me? Or if you're launching shoes, do I want to make them fall in love with the shoe? Well, I think there has to be a healthy balance of both.
Okay.
And it has to align with whatever your brand values are going to be long term. So, for example, if you're launching a shoe brand, maybe having your face behind it every single time is not necessarily relevant unless you're already a public figure, but then we wouldn't be having this conversation.
True.
So I'd say that highlight, I'd say, humanize a brand.
Yeah.
But be conscious of also adding value in every piece of content that you're putting out.
I think having a face is very important. You know, think about your brand. Imagine you didn't have a face to it.
Well, that's how I started.
And then,
I didn't have a face to it.
But before. I'm saying then it gives people
at the beginning.
It gives people opportunity to say, "Oh, but I found more similarities than just you cooking."
Correct.
Oh, I just saw you like you're going to the gym or you're playing soccer. Oh, I play soccer.
Oh, I play soccer too. Yeah.
My boy, let's go. This is my guy. I love this guy,
that,
right?
Yeah.
So I think showing your face, again, depending on the industry, shoes, completely different. Okay, very good answer. You've worked with brands like Coca-Cola, Disney, and many more. How do you structure out a campaign, or how do you structure out, okay, I got to make this piece of content and make it as viral and engaging as possible? What are the steps you go through?
So I want to make sure I have a strong hook at the beginning of every video.
Okay.
First 2 seconds are the most important seconds of the video, if you ask me.
Okay.
I like to keep my content resonating with my audience. So making sure that what I'm putting out stays in line with what my audience wants to see and what they're there to see. Again, I have a commitment to them. I'm not just going to start throwing them random pieces of content. So no, I make sure that whatever it is, I tie it back as much as possible to what I know my audience wants to see. And so strong hook. And then obviously, adding value in the post. If it's a recipe, list the recipe. Make sure you're clear on how to prepare. If it's a location that you're showcasing, because let's say it's a new park, then highlight all the awesome parts of the park that you think other people would love to enjoy as well, because chances are they might.
True.
And just kind of keep it real. I try to keep it real. Don't make it too addy. Just try to make it legit and just organic.
Let me add one on top of that then.
Yeah.
Right? Let's say there's a brand, big brand, and they want to work with you.
Yeah.
But the content that they're trying to create is kind of not too aligned with your current stuff. Let's say they're asking you not to do anything too crazy, but they're saying, hey, Nico, this time creatively, we're deciding what's happening creatively.
Okay, did I already say yes to the brand? To the campaign?
It's like, how do you find the balance between keeping a client happy, but still having your creative input?
In today's day and age, when clients when brands approach you to work with them, it's usually they want your creative.
Okay.
Specific guidelines they have to follow because again, so that you make sure you're aligned with the structure of the company, with the core values of the company. You're not promoting things that are inaccurate, and I think that's just the responsible way of doing things.
Of course.
But they usually give you control of okay, this is what we have to abide by. Now we want your brain to just do what it does, right? True. And there's always a concept that I send before filming anything, right? Because there has to be aligned with what they're looking for. Yeah. So I think it's just that it's in the concept portion. You write out the concept, and then there's either approved or hey, no, let's tweak this, let's tweak that. So you find a nice in between so that everybody's happy and you're
For creators starting out, what are 3 ways they can monetize their content effectively without having a massive following?
So 1, create top quality content to make sure that you're providing the best portfolio you can. Remember that your page is in a way your portfolio of what you can do and what your value proposition is.
Yes.
So that's number 1. Number 2 is don't be afraid to knock on doors. So if there's brands that you really dreamed of working with, go look up their email to their PR agency or look up the email to the marketing department and send an email and try and knock on the door until you get a yes or a no. I mean, but
True.
What I always say is you already have the no by not asking. So the worst thing that can happen is they say no, and that's okay. True. Or maybe they say yes, and that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then another one I'd say is I think with the involvement of rev share between platforms and consumer and creators.
Yeah.
For example, when you hit a certain threshold on YouTube, then you start getting paid revenue for the videos. Similar with Facebook, similar with Instagram. So I think that if you can enroll in those creator bonuses, if you will, then there's opportunity
like
for
affiliate programs too as well.
Exactly.
Which is huge on TikTok right now as well.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
TikTok affiliates.
Yeah, I haven't personally done that.
Yeah.
The affiliate programs where you get the one that you get commission on sales, right? Yeah. I think that's. I mean, I haven't tried it myself, but I'm sure
you don't have to be you don't have to have massive following.
Correct.
To do it, which is good, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Cool. Great answer. Before we get into the real fun stuff, I'm going to ask you to manifest something on the show. I want you to manifest something that you want to come true in the next 5-10 years. So we can come back to this episode and we look at it and we say, Nico said so. And I was here too. So I'm going to put myself in the clip too. And we're going to say this guy manifested this to life. So you can look at the camera anytime you want and let him know.
Just because you said I have to be back in 5 years and make sure it happened, now I have to really think about it, just so you know.
Think about it.
Yeah. And there's so many things I could say.
I mean, you manifested a few things already on the show.
Yeah, I know, but if I want to be very intentional
and be very detailed, yes.
Yeah.
Like the more detailed, the better. It's how we manifest,
I agree. Okay. I think I have one. I have one.
Tell the camera.
All right. So one of my dreams has always been to have my own succulent bite cafe. So what I would like for it to happen is to have the succulent bite cafe where the customer experience is super unique from the moment you walk in to the moment you walk out. You're going to find delicious desserts. You're going to find a super aesthetic place. You're going to find me every once in a while popping in and out and just catering and chatting with my guests and being able to have that human connection with them, because I'm all about human connections, as we've heard in this show. For me, that's the basis of everything. So I'd love to cater to my audience and bring in the real people that are there every single day into a place where they can actually enjoy some of the things they see on camera.
Boom. I'll be there too, by the way.
Man,
I need some espressos, double espresso. I love it, bro. That's for sure gonna happen. By the way,
I hope so. Man,
you got
I hope
that.
So.
That's easy. Okay, some rapid fire before we get to our famous question. What's the best advice you have for someone trying to create a viral piece of content? I know you said it happens so organically sometimes and so naturally, like in Croatia. All of a sudden, 100 million views.
Right,
But is there any method to the madness?
I'd say you can optimize to try and get the best results. For me, what works for me is short videos.
Okay.
So I'd say keep it 15 seconds, 12, 15, 20 seconds maybe.
Okay.
Have a very, very strong hook at the beginning.
Okay.
Add value in every post that you're making. So if it's entertaining, if it's entertainment, then make sure that it's very entertaining.
Yeah.
And be consistent. So again, because you don't know which is the one that's going to hit.
Yeah.
Be consistent. That doesn't necessarily mean being post every day. It's better to have a few posts per week that are going to give you, but very well thought out posts that might give you that virality that you're looking for.
What are some ways that I can better understand my audience?
Listening and reading their comments and reading their DMs and taking into consideration their opinions with a grain of salt. Careful with the opinions, because the opinions, The opinions are a slippery
Yeah,
slope. If
yeah.
you let them, you can't really take them all and read them. No, you have to be very objective with what you're deciding to take in. So, for example, somebody might say, "Oh, well, I hate cheesecake." Well, cool, okay.
That's
then
not
I'm not going
something-
to
yeah.
stop doing it because that's
Yeah,
fine. That's
yeah.
okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Everybody, that's okay. But if somebody says, "Oh, it would be great if you had 7 different flavors a week," then that's something I'm going to say, "Oh, well, look at that. Maybe people want more
True.
variety." So that's one way that I'd say, or the key way that I say you could connect with them directly is that and replying.
True.
Reply to them.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the advice. Oh, what flavors do you think I should make? Oh, with or without crust, and engage with them
Yeah.
because then people are become more of your community
Of
rather
course.
than just people.
But they feel they can now. That person feels like every time they come up with something cool, they can message you.
Exactly,
And tell you.
exactly.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Better food scene, Miami or Spain?
Ooh, that's a tough one. It depends on what you want. Damn.
What about if I like all kinds of food?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you this. Miami is a lot of fun. So is Spain. I'd say that in Spain, you're going to find maybe more culturally enriching experiences simply because of the nature of how old Spain is, and because you can go to places where in castles and have and have pork that's been baked for the whole day in a special oven in a mountain. Wonderful. That's very specific.
Okay.
But then in Miami you have so much variety and just it's so eclectic and fun and upbeat, and it's just a different vibe.
True.
So it depends on the vibe you're looking for.
Okay,
if you
fair
will.
enough.
Yeah.
Who's a creator you'd love to collaborate with?
Oh, I would love to collaborate with David Dobrik.
Wow.
I would
on a
love
pizza
to.
or what?
Yeah, man. On what? Honestly, yes. To
True.
add value to him, yes. On a pizza.
I mean, you should just
fantastic.
reach out to him. I'm sure there's something there.
True.
Right,
Well,
like,
there you talk
he has a
about
team.
knocking on doors, right?
Yeah, he has a
email.
team.
Yeah,
Hit him
I'll
up.
take my own advice. Yeah, for
There
real.
you
Yeah.
go. Your most favorite dish that you've created?
Favorite dish I've created has to be the Bath style cheesecake line. So all of those variations, like the peach or the double chocolate or the Oreo that I've created, that's just crustless and just the creamy inside, bro. I love that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's say someone's watching right now and they wanna be the next succulent bite.
Ooh.
Okay. The next Nico.
Yeah.
Nico, do I gotta go to school?
Do you have to go to school?
Do I gotta go to university? Do I gotta go to college? If I want to live the life you're living and become the person you became, do I need that?
I'd say technically, no.
Okay.
But I would not discourage from getting educated. And the reason why, as a matter of fact, let me rephrase that. I will encourage education any day of the week. And the reason why is because it provides structure, it provides mental organization, and it provides basics of life and commitment that you learn while you're at the learning institution. Maybe there's a lot of marketing, and business things that I learned in college that I didn't apply or that I don't even remember I learned, right? That's totally fine. And that's just what it is. But the mind that you develop by attending college and taking the test and learning and reading textbooks and analyzing and digesting information, I think that's very important.
Yeah, that's stuff you take with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Maybe you never apply it, and that's okay. Maybe
But it's
you
in the
forget
back of your head,
but,
though.
But yes, but having the discipline to go with that, it just it matures you as a person.
True.
I think.
Of course.
Depends.
Famous question time. Nico. Nico, does money buy happiness?
Well, I'll tell you this. It depends on what you consider to be happiness. For me, happiness is spending time with the ones I love. It's traveling the world. It's having the freedom to do those things whenever I would like to do them. Money, I think, enables you to do all those things. So in that portion, yes, I think it does. But then happiness for me is also health and being healthy, and for my family and friends and my wife to be healthy. And money doesn't necessarily buy that. So I guess it depends on what you consider happiness. I think it could do a lot for a portion, but there's other components that you just have to, hope for the best.
True.
Yeah.
Great chat, bro. I appreciate you coming. I got to come check out your restaurant.
Absolutely.
The cafe is going to be open in the next 5 years.
Yes, let's go,
Let's
baby.
get it. Keep killing it,
love
brother.
it.
Appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you,
Lots of
Ernesto.
value in this one. Yeah, keep doing your thing, bro.
Appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, man. Thank you.
We out.